Howdy. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about me, the man behind Absolute Ascendancy. So, my story begins from my childhood. And growing up, I struggled immensely for various reasons. I suffered from asthma, and I've talked about that in another video, which I will link. Also, educationally, I was very behind the curve. I ended up staying down a year. I can't remember what year it was. Year 2, I would like to say. And this was just because I was not keeping up with the rest of the class, basically. I had to take remedial lessons. In those days, it was called reading recovery. So I had special needs classes, basically, which helped me catch up to some extent. But also, as I progressed through primary school, I ended up taking additional tutoring lessons outside school hours. And that really helped me in looking back in hindsight. I was slow to develop, both in terms of mental abilities and physical abilities as well. This all changed in my later years, but before we get to that, I'll talk through my transition into high school. So, I spent one term in year 7 in high school before moving country from Australia to the United Kingdom. And due to class timings, the differences in the school year, basically, I ended up jumping all the way to the sort of last term of year 8, essentially year 9. So, when they had to sort of give me tests to see what classes I would be assigned to what sets. In the United Kingdom, you have sort of sets, so classes are split based on ability. And I remember taking the maths test, and it was full of like algebra and other bits and pieces, none of which I had any real exposure to. And so I remember looking at this equation, solve for x. It had, some numbers, had x's and y's, and I had no idea what to do. Back in primary school, you just had numbers. I was just thinking to myself, what's with this English? Why is English and maths blending together? What's going on? I'm so confused. Needless to say, I did not perform well in any of those tests. So I did one for maths, I did one for English, did one for science, and languages, don't get me started. I remember my French teacher, he gave me this test. And I'd never studied French before. Like in primary school, we did a bit of Indonesia, but even then, that knowledge was rudimentary at best. So, being given this French test, I had to sort of match some of the English words to the French counterparts. And the teacher, he just basically told me to, don't worry if you don't know, just take a guess. And guessed I did, and unfortunately my guesswork just wasn't on the mark. So needless to say, I was placed in bottom sets during, my early high school days, secondary school days rather, I guess. I was placed in set 5 for science, 4 for maths, and 4 for English. So I had a lot of catching up to do to get to where to get to how I was able to graduate with a first class degree in mathematics. So I have to thank my older brother, actually, and even my father. They both spent a lot of time helping me catch up with regard to mathematics. And so by the time I'm in year 9, so within a year, I was able to end up in Set 2 for math, science and English for the GCSEs, which was fantastic, to be honest. That was such a result. And yeah, in GCSEs, I end up with a B in maths, a B in English, and I want to say an A in science, but I can't remember now. Anyway, moving on. In A levels, I choose to do mathematics, chemistry, physics, and I managed to get an A for my A level in mathematics, which was a big deal because A levels are significantly tougher than GCSEs, and yet I was able to get a superior grade in my A levels for mathematics than GCSE. So this was a huge result for me. Subsequently, this led to me, pursuing mathematics further at university, and by some miracle, I managed to graduate with a first class honours. I was on the cusps though. To be honest, my actual percentage was 69.7 or something of that nature, and the university decided to bump me up to a first class mark. Very generous of them. So yes, so that's educationally where I was, and sort of the efforts I had to take in order to get from where I was to, graduating with a first class. From someone who was unable to do, even basic mathematics at the high school level, through, unyielding persistence, lots of effort, was able to, over the span of about 5 years, was able to, turn things around and, graduate with top marks at university. And I pulled a similar result with my physicality. So as a child, I've suffered from asthma. I've talked about that already. But also my body wasn't very strong. I had a rather weak body in terms of physical strength. And over the years, I gradually built my strength up, particularly from my late teen years onwards into my young adult years. I started training at home pretty relentlessly in pursuit of greater strength. I started training more at the dojo as well. I switched to karate styles, so I used to do sort of a non-contact form of karate, and I switched to doing full contact karate, which is a lot more dynamic. You exert a lot more energy in doing full contact karate in comparison to non-contact variants of martial arts. So these factors combined allowed me to transform my body completely. Like, I used to be skinny, weak, and short of breath. But now, I'm a fighting machine. I'm very strong for martial arts, I mean. Like, in terms of pure weightlifting power, sure, I'm a far cry from, many other people. But in terms of being able to generate dynamic power, I'm right up there with the best of them. So and I've documented all of the sort of training that I do at home. I've written all of it down in a book called Home Workout. And for this month only, I'm offering 500 copies for free. Now, there's a video promo vid that I've created, and I will link to that in the description below. So please, feel free to check that out if that seems of interest to you. But yes, while I started off with a difficult childhood in terms of, mental abilities, physical abilities, also suffering from lack of friendships. Growing up, I didn't really have many friends. People didn't really want to be my friend. I feel this is also in part my fault because of just the way I can be. I remember even as a child, and even to the present day, I can be rather annoying. It's not always intentional. It's just the way I can come across, I suppose. But regardless, for whatever reason, people tended not to like me. And to be honest, I don't think that has really changed in the present day either as such. My gut instinct tells me that and this will always be the case, you'll never win everyone over. You'll always have people who don't like you, and that's just the way it is. But yes, over the years, I've learned to sort of cope and harness solitary living. And again, I've written a book about the benefits of leading a solitary life. It's called Black Box, and I will link to that in the description below as well, if that is of interest to you. But yes, basically, as a child, I was forced into darkness, as it will. I spent many of my lunch times in the library just reading books because I had no one to interact with. Or I would just go for solitary walks around the school premises. But eventually I did make some friends, and I started hanging out with them. But there was certainly a period in my schooling years where I would spend most of my time alone, and having to be forced into that sort of solitary lifestyle has taught me many life lessons which I use in the current day to further myself. I'm very much an advocate of individual strength. That does not mean I don't appreciate cooperative efforts, however. The ideal is that you have a balance of both. Push forward using your own individual capabilities, but understand that at times it's okay to, fall back, get a second opinion, ask for help. That's all cool. I'm all cool with that. That's perfectly fine. But I believe in today's world, this constantly connected world that we live in, people have become too dependent on others. And I feel that there's this balance of individuality and connectivity or integration. And I feel that the scales have tipped in favor of this constant connectivity. And so this is one of the main reasons why I decided to dedicate a book to solitary living, is because I believe the scales have tipped, and I feel that things need to be recalibrated. The scales need to be recalibrated, rebalanced, as it were. But anyway, to the present day, I am a man of varied interests. I will play my fair share of board games. Twilight Imperium is currently one of my favourites. But I enjoy many others as well. I'll name a few: Lords of Waterdeep, Splendor, Star Wars Rebellion, Blood Rage, etc., etc. I'm into my video games as well, though admittedly I don't play them quite as often as I used to as a child. My current interest is Crash Team Racing, a big fan of that. I play the piano as well. That's another great sort of stress reliever for me. It's mainly video game soundtracks that I play: Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Pokemon, Valkyria Chronicles, Persona, these sorts of games that I'll try and pick original soundtracks from and try and play songs from those types of games. And of course my martial arts. I mean, this is such a huge part of my life. I'm currently a second Dan black belt, studies full contact karate. I train at the dojo around at least 3 times a week. I also train at home around 3 times a week as well. So I do a lot of exercise. Exercise is a big thing for me, keeping healthy. And this is one of the main reasons I decided to create Absolute Ascendancy, my brand, my personal brand, is because I want to spread my message, my influence to the rest of the world. I'm a big promoter of, building people up, building your strengths, trying to circumvent your weaknesses, unleashing your potential, getting out there, getting active, building a strong body, a strong mind. Then you can conquer life. You can just smash through whatever comes your way. So that's kind of what Absolute Ascendancy represents. That's what my brand is all about. It's about unleashing the very best within each individual. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It gives you a little bit of a flavour about who the man behind Absolute Ascendancy is. So if you have any questions or you want to learn more about me or, whatever it is, just post a comment in the comments below and I'll respond. And I think that's a wrap. So I'm going to say farewell on this one. Waylord's going to say goodbye as well. Goodbye! And mission complete. Signing out.